So we just covered what glands are, what hormones are. Let's take a look at some other principles of endocrine signaling. First of all, I guess I already made reference to this in the previous slide, but basically what happens in endocrine signaling is you have an endocrine cell or cells that are located in an endocrine gland. Those cells are going to secrete these signaling molecules, these hormones, which are shown as the little red triangles, little red diamonds here, sorry. Those guys go into the bloodstream, and then those signaling molecules are then carried to the other cells in the body, okay? Some cells have receptors that allow them to detect that signaling molecule, that hormone. And when it detects that hormone, that will lead to some kind of response within that cell. Many other cells in the body will not have a receptor for that molecule in the body. And if it doesn't have a receptor, it can't tell that that hormone is there. And as a result, it will not respond to the hormone. Okay, so that's how hormones achieve their specificity. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that in this series of lectures. And then I already talked about this. Hormones are molecules secreted by endocrine glands into the bloodstream. All right. Right, and this is a reminder, an endocrine gland is going to look like this. Okay, a little bit about hormones. So hormones are kind of special molecules. We'll be talking a lot about hormones in the coming videos that are part of this series of lectures. But here are a few general principles. Like I said in the previous slide, hormones are going to elicit different effects on different targets, right? So you have one hormone, sometimes it'll affect a cell. Well, I guess that's this one right here. Sometimes it'll have no effect on a cell, okay? And even if it does have an effect on a cell, that effect on the cell might differ from cell to cell, depending on the signal transduction cascades that exist within that cell. Okay, and again, I'll be addressing this in greater detail in the coming little lecture videos, okay? Hormones work at very low concentrations, right? So they work at picomolar to nanomolar concentrations usually, and that's pretty low. So most molecules that you find in your body, ions and things like that, those are going to be present in the body at millimolar concentrations. Okay, millimolar is 10 to the negative third. Okay, picomolar or nanomolar, which are the range of concentrations that we see hormones being effective at. Picomolar is 10 to the negative 12. Nanomolar is 10 to the negative 9. Okay, so hormones are going to be effective at concentrations that are 1 million to 1 billion times lower than the concentrations of the other molecules that we find in our bodies, okay? And then finally, I just want to introduce to you this term half-life, which we're going to be referring to a lot in this part of the class. Half-life is the amount of time that's required to reduce the concentration of a hormone in the plasma by 1/2. Okay, so we start with a certain concentration, it eventually goes down to 1/2. That amount of time that it takes to go down to 1/2 is what we refer to as the half-life of a hormone. Okay, and then finally, I think this is the last slide for this portion of this lecture. Endocrine signaling can be complicated, okay? So, well, first of all, endocrine signaling can be simple, right? So this is an example of a simple endocrine reflex. What happens in a simple endocrine reflex is that the endocrine cell or endocrine gland acts as both the sensor and the integrating center, right? So it'll detect, whatever blood glucose is low, for example, okay? And then it'll send out a hormone that then rectifies that situation, okay? So that's a simple endocrine reflex. However, we also have situations in which, so this is the, wait, oh yeah, okay. We also have situations in which we have complicated reflex loops controlling the release of a particular hormone, right? So here we've got a neuron in the brain or the spinal cord signaling to an endocrine gland, which then releases a hormone into the bloodstream. Okay, here we have a neuron in the brain or the spinal cord sending out what's called a neurohormone into the bloodstream. That hormone then reaches another endocrine cell elsewhere in the body, and that endocrine cell then releases a hormone into the bloodstream. Okay, here we've got the central nervous system, the brain or the spinal cord, releasing this molecule called a neurohormone into the bloodstream. That hormone then reaches an endocrine gland, which then releases a hormone into the bloodstream. That hormone then reaches another endocrine gland, which then releases another hormone into the bloodstream. Okay, so it can be kind of complicated like this. Okay, I have a question for you to answer at this point in time. Okay, don't worry about getting the right or wrong answers, but I do want you to just sort of take a moment, look at this and think about it and see what you can come up with. Okay, where are the integrating centers in these pathways? So each of these three pathways shown here, show me where the integrating centers are. Okay, so go ahead and pause to answer that question. Okay, hopefully you've gotten a chance to think about that some. I think we will cover that in class. We'll go over the answer to this question in class, but hopefully you've either figured it out or you have thought about it enough to be curious about what the answer might be. That pretty much wraps up our overview of the endocrine system. Just to let you know, these are your learning goals, and then this is your vocabulary for this section. All right, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.